which has been a priority for me in my district for the last couple of years. And it's been a crazy day, so I apologize for the thoughts that may just be kind of like a brain just dump on you all. This bill has been important because in Callaway County in particular, when I was in the House, this became a really big issue where these solar farms that were coming in to they were going to lease or buy thousands of acres of land in Callaway County. They were going to surround churches, schools, residences. Became a really big concern, especially in New Bloomfield when we had a meeting with a solar company that really did a poor job of really explaining what their project was going to look like to our local community, which just exacerbated the problem and concerned a lot of people because if you can't get an answer on how these are going to impact your community, you start kind of assuming a lot, and that creates even more problems. And so the intent of the bill originally and remains to be that we've got to figure out how the state is going to look at these massive solar farms. These are thousands of acres. They create a good bit of energy, but they take a ton of property to create the type of energy that they're looking for. And so my bill as written would allow county commissioners to have some say over whether or not these massive farms come into the counties. It also has a taxation piece, so there's at least some understanding of how these are going to be taxed in the state of Missouri. Right now we have no provisions for that. A couple years ago, Mr. Chair and several others on the committee worked alongside each other to get some stabilization in the tax structure for wind farms done. This is a similar discussion around a similar issue, or at least the counties know what they're up against. Right now they're negotiating with solar companies on power purchase agreements, or not power purchase agreements, but payments in lieu of taxes. And they're, I think these solar companies are very sophisticated. We should have a standard for taxation around the state, and this does that in the bill. And then the last provision is how does a PSC handle these farms going forward and what they look like for our state. I think what probably ends up happening, one of my representatives in my district, Representative Kent Hayden, has worked extremely hard and alongside me on this issue. And he has a bill on the House side that I think he's negotiating really well. And I think at the end of the day, what I hope this looks like is there are a lot of parameters on what a solar farm should look like, some regulations on how they can impact the people that they're surrounding, the businesses, the houses, the schools, the churches that they're surrounding. And how do we ensure that even though farmers should have the right to use their property as they'd like, it's not impacting the values of homes around them. It's not impacting the environment around them. And so what that looks like, I'm not quite sure, but there have been a lot of discussions over the last couple of years. I think some of it should include setback language that requires these solar farms to be at least a certain distance from a home, a church, a school. I think some of it should be bonding and mitigation in statute, where we have some understanding if these solar farms up and leave, that there's some way to ensure that the farmland is returned back to its original state. I think there's a lot of ways to think about this. The tax structure should be something that is probably similar to windmills, but also ensures that local districts, school districts, and counties and areas are appropriately represented in those discussions. So there's a lot around this issue, and we've been having these discussions for a while, and you're going to hear from some of my constituents that have been impacted by this firsthand, so I don't want to take too much time here explaining this, but at the end of the day, we've got to wrap our mind around what is state policy going to look like for these massive farms, because we're in flyover country, and the folks that want this power don't really care about what our farms look like, and I want to make sure that we have something in place, some standards in place to ensure that our farmers, who my constituents are thought for in the midst of all these big discussions around solar farms. So I'll let the committee ask questions. I know, again, I have several local community folks who will very passionately explain to you why this matters to them, and I want to give them time.
Thank you, Senator. When you say they should be able to evaluate the impact on their neighbors as far as these things go in, maybe we should include CAFOs with this bill.
Yeah.
So this bill just only impacts the commercial solar and wind farms, right? Solar farms.
Yeah, they're larger scale farms, and CAFOs aren't thousands of acres. It's a much different thing when you're putting farms on thousands of acres.
The impact can be somewhat anyway. So this is just commercial stuff, and the assessment stuff. Is there any agreement on that yet, or is that still kind of?
I think it's still in the process. I talked to some of the folks in the hall just before this committee they actually, I think Mosia gave a document there that has what other states are doing on the tax structure. I think those ranges are probably a pretty good standard to start from. What are other states doing?
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. How many people want to testify in favor of this bill? How many in opposition? Oh, we're about even. Okay. Why don't we come up one at a time for pro and con? So the first person, and I'd like not to have to tell people to cut them short. So if you all pro and con can figure out who's the best spokesman, the first couple maybe to come up, and then everybody else maybe could just add on because many times they repeat. So the first person in favor, please come forward.
Hello, good morning. I am Leslie Meyer. I'm Associate Commissioner of Audrain County, as well as the Chair of the Agriculture Committee for the Missouri Association of Counties. I am also a fourth-generation farmer in the state of Missouri. When I was trying to figure out what to say today, I didn't know quite how to start, because after dealing with solar farms for the past 3 or 4 years, I've learned a lot. And I know that our electrical infrastructure is in poor shape. I know that utility companies like Ameren need to have a well-united mix of power and reliable power at that. But the funding that was provided on the federal level exploded the solar projects in the state of Missouri as well as across the country, to the point that there's some developers out there that maybe shouldn't be developing solar. Either they don't have the resources available to last the project, or they don't have the community's best interest at heart because their goal is to get their federal funding and get out. For Audrain County, we've been really fortunate. We've had 5 solar projects. One is looming in the future, but our developers that have come there have been very focused on being good community partners. Ameren purchased farm ground itself for a solar project, and they even went around and talked to the neighbors and asked, what can we do to make this more palatable for you? What do you need from us to be good neighbors? EDF is another solar project or developer that came into Audrain County, and they made themselves part of the community. They volunteer, they do grants, they invite school kids out to come look at the farms and learn about how solar works. But for every good company story that Audrain has, there's other counties that have, I don't want to say horror stories for developers, but developers that just haven't had the needs of the community at heart. I believe in one of our neighboring counties, there was a developer who wanted to build a solar project, and I believe this is what Senator Fitzwater was mentioning earlier in his testimony. The church asked them, could you give us a setback of a couple 100 feet so that the solar panels don't come right up to the property line and we can still enjoy our sanctuary? And the developer said, no, we don't have to. We don't want to. And there wasn't any rhyme or reason or working with their neighbors to get that done. Another county, he described the solar developer as someone who probably started the company in the basement of their home, and they definitely did not have the funding to last a 20-year decommissioning agreement that their county needed for this project. And then we think about how it affects agriculture, and I do want to say with the CAFO issue, we don't have CAFOs on our farms, so I'm not a CAFO advocate, but they are highly regulated, and solar is not regulated that much. But the trickle-down effect in agriculture, when we do well in ag, the whole economy booms in the counties. And it's not just the businesses associated with agriculture, it's not just the fertilizers and the seed dealers, it's everyone from graphic businesses to just retail stores and more. And when we're taking these properties out of ag and putting them in solar, that opportunity for economic development decreases rapidly because there's no other use for that ground other than solar panels. They're not generating money for the counties, for the taxing entities, meaning the school districts, the ambulance districts, the library boards, the road districts. They're there. And it's up to the developers if they want to work with the counties to do something like Chapter 100s. It's up to them to say, yes, we want to be good corporate citizens. And as we've seen in our neighboring counties, not every developer is like that. And so that is why a bill such as this is extremely important, because it helps give us, the commissions, the ability to not only protect the property rights of those who sign their land up for said projects, but it also helps us hear what the neighbors are saying and hear what they need in order to preserve their property rights. And right now, it's pretty one-sided. So if I sign my ground up for a solar project, the developer doesn't have to go to my neighbors and who live and bought a house and have this majestic view and say, what do we need to do to help you? They may just be stuck with hundreds of acres across their dream house from the road with solar panels. And who really wants that for their retirement home? I know I wouldn't. So that's what we need this bill for. It allows all residents to advocate for themselves on the project. It protects our counties from less reputable developers. So if we can work with those developers and get the memorandum of understanding, get the road use agreements, and get the decommissioning agreements in place, then it's possible to move forward with a project. But if you wind up with a developer that doesn't, we have nothing now. And this would allow us to instill a process which is badly needed when it comes to this, this area. But I think it's also important to mention counties don't want to punish or eliminate solar. We know we need it eventually, but we need something to keep it from taking over. And right now, we can see the writing on the wall, and it seems like it takes up so many acres for a project, and sometimes our county economies are at stake. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somebody in opposition, please come forward. I didn't mention this earlier. Every witness, please leave a form if you haven't done it online, so we have that record. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to testify on 213. My name is Waylon Brown. I represent Clean Grid Alliance. We are a trade organization that represents independent power producers across the Midwest. And I would like to just point out some of the items that we feel are opposition to Senate Bill 213. We believe the provisions in the bill have detrimental effects on economic development, innovation, and Missouri's ability to compete with neighboring states. The proposed tax rate of 37.5% of the original cost of solar energy projects, as outlined in Section 137.124, is excessively high. This burdensome tax rate will significantly increase the financial strain on developers, making it economically unfeasible to pursue new projects. High taxation on renewable energy infrastructure not only discourages investment, but also stifles the growth of an industry that is crucial for sustainable development, energy independence, and attracting new businesses to Missouri. States like Iowa and Kansas have more favorable tax policies, making them more attractive for renewable energy investments. Imposing high tax rates and cumbersome regulations will drive developers to other states, resulting in loss of potential jobs, technological advancements, and economic growth for Missouri. The renewable energy sector is a critical component of modern infrastructure and economic development. By imposing high taxes, you risk pushing Missouri to the back of the line for a race of new technology industry and manufacturing. We urge you to reconsider the provisions of this bill and work towards creating a more favorable tax environment for renewable energy development.
Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you. So are you, is the main issue you have with the bill then is the taxation part?
The main issue would be the taxation part, but when you look at setbacks too, you need to make sure that the setbacks are reasonable. The setbacks proposed in this legislation are high, and we should really take a look at lowering those setbacks as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions for this witness? Senator Bernsketter.
What are the tax rates in other states?
I have a document I could provide you. It varies depending upon the state, but a lot of states are going with a nameplate tax, and usually right around that $2,000, $2,500 is a fair rate for that. But you also need to look at, as you're looking at your tax structure, you have to take a look at other things that are going into it as well. You know, Wisconsin, for example, they have a nameplate tax, but it's only on that nameplate tax. There's no other tax associated with it. But I do have a document that has all 8 states that border Missouri and what they do. And then I also have another 12 states that I pulled for you guys as well. So I can get that to
Get it to the chairman. Okay.
definitely. Yep, I can do
Thank
that.
you.
Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person in favor, please come forward. Anybody in favor? Don't be bashful.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for allowing me to share my story and the importance of Senate Bill 213, which regulates and taxes solar. I'm Charles Greg Crawford. Our family's been farming for 4 generations, spanning over nearly 100 years.
Sir, what did you say your name was?
Charles Greg Crawford.
Thank you.
We've identified 10,000 acres of proposed industrial-scale solar farms within 10 miles of our family farm. 10,000 acres is 15.62 square miles. We know there's much more throughout the Missouri because the solar companies don't have to disclose the prime farmland used under lease agreements. The solar companies for the last 7+ years have come into our community under the cloak of secrecy, requiring the landowners to sign non-disclosure agreements. This is why authority is needed for the county commission to require public notices and hearings so the affected community can get information up front about the magnitude and scope of the project, and the citizens can express any concerns. The county commission needs the power so they can make an informed decision about what is best for their respective county. The federal government is pushing and funding solar and wind projects in rural heartland of America like we've never experienced in modern history, which is removing the most valuable, productive land that has fed this nation and helped sustain the rural communities and counties. Solar is unlike wind turbines because the prime farmland is totally taken out of production for 30 to 40 years. According to Wisconsin U.S. Representative Tom Tiffany, solar companies can get as much as $50,000 per acre in federal subsidies. The tax methodology in Senate Bill 213 for solar is consistent with wind, but solar is far more detrimental because the land is completely removed from production, so solar should pay at least what wind does, which is still giving them a tax advantage over every other energy in sector. Solar is already receiving 30 to 40% federal subsidies. These industrial scale solar facilities, property, equipment, and the involved acres should all be assessed at a commercial tax rate based on the tax dollars, plus the tax dollars should stay in the affected community and county. We need these commercial tax dollars to equip and train our rural fire departments to be able to respond to disasters at these massive solar power plants, keep our schools solvent and increase teachers' pay, and help provide other community services. The total economic effect per year to a county amounts to approximately $1 million for every 1,000 acres removed from agricultural production. So Callaway County will lose $10 million annually. This is supported by a study done by the Michigan State University in 2020. The tremendous loss of farm revenue and rural communities will be devastating. Solar companies' revenue will not stay in the state, whereas farm revenue is primarily recirculated throughout the local economy. I don't know how many of you grew up in a rural community. The loss of farm revenue is crippling to rural communities. An example of what happens when rural or when agricultural farmland is taken out of production. Just look at the effects of the small rural communities north of Highway 36 after the CRP program was implemented in 1985. The CRP program removes large amounts of farmland from production, which resulted in jobs drying up and businesses closing their doors because there was no longer recirculation of farm revenue in these communities. The rural communities and counties that will lose jobs and businesses plus their tax revenue as a result of substantial loss of agricultural dollars should expect that these utility-scale solar power plants to be treated like every other industrial, commercial, or energy business and be assessed at a commercial rate. Let me leave you with two thoughts. The chairman mentioned CAFO. CAFO facilities are bound by law to require public hearings and notices, and they have setbacks up to 3,000 feet. Why should utility scale solar projects have this? Why shouldn't utility scale solar projects have the same type of requirements, since the footprint is far greater and affects more neighbors and citizens? Additionally, we are consistently told by lobbyists that solar is the most cost-effective and efficient energy source, but they can only pay a few $1,000s per megawatt in taxes. The solar industry needs the countless federal and state subsidies, dollars, and favorable tax breaks to survive, when all other energy sectors are able to compete while paying the commercial tax rate. Should not everyone be on a level playing field and the best business model and product rise to the top? Senate Bill 213 is very important and needs your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Senator May.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My question is this. So, the private farm owners who are no longer farming their land, or people who have gotten too old and don't have any generational farmers, what do you, in order for them, their land to continue to be profitable for them, what do you suggest?
Well, I mean, the solar farms or solar, I call them power plants because that's what they are. We have faced nothing like this in the United States, taking this much of a grab of land, and there's no regulation. I couldn't go out there and build a parking lot over 300 acres, and the federal government and the state government would be right in there wanting to regulate, do an environmental impact study. The thing is, it's so massive, and it's so, and the neighbors are also being affected. And those individuals, there's going to be solar there. We're not going to be able to stop that from ever happening. But it needs to be regulated, and there needs to be some constraints as far as the size of it. But
Okay. So you're saying, so if I'm a farmer and I have 86 acres of farmland, which is not a lot,
mm-hmm.
and I want to use that 86 acres because I'm no longer farming for solar panels, you're saying the impact on my neighbors is the view of the panels, or what other impact is there? Because you're saying, what regulations are you considering? Because whatever regulations, if they're leasing their land, because I'm sure if they're leasing their land, I don't know if they're selling it or leasing it.
most of them are leasing you.
Yeah, so if they're leasing their property for them to get an income, the regulations you're putting out there, how would that impact the resident who is leasing their land, because I'm sure if they're still living in that area, they are still contributing to the tax base as residents of the area. So I'm just trying to get a clarity or balance here of what we're talking about.
Okay, first of all, if a tornado went through there, which Missouri has tornadoes, and it scattered that 86-acre panels all over the neighboring farms, and you would have glass, you'd have a material that's considered toxic by the EPA on the ground. Who's going to pay for that cleanup? How are you going to be able to take all the glass and not feed your cat or graze your cattle on those kind of conditions? You know, there's concerns about that. Plus, I forgot your latter question. Sorry.
You're fine. I was just talking about the regulation impact on the owner themselves.
Oh, about the circulation of you said something about the money would stay in the community. If that money, with farming, we have to buy seed, chemicals, we hire custom workers to custom flyover crop dusting and stuff like that. So we create revenue for other individuals to have jobs. Where if you have just a set payment coming in, that's basically, you could probably have buy another home, vacation home, or whatever. It's not going to be in our community, probably not in our state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next in opposition, please come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Noel Torpy. I'm representing Arevon Energy. Just a couple things on the bill. You know, let's keep in mind, we sometimes fall into the trap of wind and solar are the same. They are not. They are very different, just like every other energy. And a perfect example, Tennessee taxes wind at about 33%, and they tax solar at 12.5%. That's a neighboring state. I think one of the other witnesses said, you know, Kansas and Iowa tax it at 0. Unfortunately, because of the Supreme Court, we have to do something here. I get that. But at 37.5%, as of last year, that would be the highest tax in the country on solar. That's higher than California. That's higher than all the other states. The setbacks at 1,000 feet, I couldn't find any other state that had such far setbacks. And the further the setbacks, the more ag land that's going to be gobbled up for these projects. So if you set it back at 1,000 feet, the companies doing this are going to need more ag land to hit their goal on the energy they want to sell. So that could be a very slippery slope, if that makes sense. The company I represent has a project in Scott County. We always get local buy-in. You know what, we're big, we go all over the country and world to do these projects. If we don't get local buy-in, we don't want to be there. Scott County was welcome to have us, you know, Jamie Berger's district. I mean, they were great to have us. They wanted us there, and we want to be there. That project, the footprint's about 2,500 acres. It's about 349 megawatts. It could give energy for about 66,000 Missouri homes over the duration, you know, every year. It's going to generate, it's a lease of 35 years. It'll be decommissioned after that. We have insurance on it. We have bonding on it. It'll be up to the landowners in 35 years whether they want to put some other alternative energy on it or build skyscrapers. It will generate $34.8 million for Scott County. 27.9 of that million will go to local schools. It'll create, while they're building it, will take about roughly 18 to 24 months. It'll create 943 full-time jobs. 440 are from Scott County directly. I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind, farmers are taxed at 12%. We're going to be taxed higher for sure because our land, that land automatically goes commercial, right? And that's what generates so much more tax dollars for the community. The higher the tax, it's going to be a pass-through. So it's going to, ultimately, the ratepayers are going to make up the difference, right? Companies aren't going to stay in business if they eat it, if they just figure out, if they have to be able to pay the taxes and make the company work. So if the tax is at 37.5%, it's simply a pass-through onto the consumer. And I think that's a slippery slope as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. Oh, and one other thing. Our setbacks were 100 feet from the residential, and they're 65 feet from the front of the roads and 50 on the rear end. That's what we came up with when working with the local community.
Okay, just for the benefit of me and maybe the committee, when we're talking about these assessments, so say you have $1 million solar property. I know it's low, but just for easy numbers. You're saying then from the assessor's point of view, they'll assess it at $375,000 and then lay the levy on top of that, and that's what the tax rate will be?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay. And so the 37.5% is a little higher than our commercial rates in Missouri now, they're 33, right?
At 32 or 33.
I'm seeing heads
yeah.
shaking, so yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right,
Yeah.
okay. And don't these panels have a lifetime?
I'm sorry?
How long will these panels, don't they have a lifetime, they diminish as time goes by?
Yeah, I mean, our lease is 35 years,
How many times will you change the panels out?
I
in those
don't know
35
the
years?
answer to that, honestly. Obviously, as technology changes, and if they can upgrade and make more energy,
Right.
I would assume they would do that.
Okay.
Obviously, a Revon would pay for that, not the
Right,
person
right.
leasing
Okay.
the land.
Are any assessors going to testify today? I just had some questions, but I'll talk to them in my office. Thank you. Any other questions to this witness? Senator May.
So what is the average amount of farmland? Say, for instance, if I'm a solar company, what is the average amount of land that I need to have in order to, produce the energy?
So
that I
for
need
this
to-
project, 349 megawatts, the footprint is 2,500 acres.
Okay, 2,500 acres.
And that will generate enough energy for 66,000 homes in Missouri,
Okay.
on average, an average Missourian home.
Those setbacks you mentioned on the project in Scott County, is that mirror what you've done in other places, or was that just an agreement you came up with them?
On average, from what research, the average setbacks are around 100 feet on average. So, I know, the sponsor mentioned Doc Hayden's bill. I think his is 100 from residential and then 500 for schools and churches. And then, of course, the sponsors is 1,000 across the board, which is really far. I couldn't find any setbacks that large. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next in favor, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess it's still morning, yeah.
Thank you for letting me come. My name is Susan Burns. I live in Callaway County. I live on a century farm, and my grandchildren are seventh generation on that. I'm facing 2,300 acres of solar right across the road from me. It will also be on another side of my farm, so it'll be two sides of my farm. So I have a lot of skin in this game. I also have a lot of neighbors who have skin in the game. We have a 7,200 acre solar project that is getting ready to start. And I will tell you that we have tried for 18 months to ask them to come and talk to our community and answer our questions, and they have refused. So we are experiencing the opposite of what Ms. Myers explained. And that's making a lot of anxiety. It's causing our commissioners untold agony in how to help the community. We have 12, and at 7,200 acres, we have 12 landowners who say we can do anything with our property that we want. We have 135 adjoining landowners who are scared to death. They know that their property is going to devalue. It devalues up to 30%, depending on how far away you are, but up to a mile, it will devalue. So they are concerned that they're not going to be able to sell their land. It's also going to, if it really actually devalues, then the assessment is going to devalue, so that's going to affect the tax rate in the county and bring in less taxes as well. So there's a lot of issues. Someone asked about concerns of the adjoining landowners. Our concerns have to do with not just looking at it. It's not aesthetic at all. We are concerned about fire. Solar fires are increasing daily. They are not manned. They have no one on the ground that watches them. Most of them are shorts and electrical situations which catch the brush on fire. And they're in a locked area with a big fence. We have a volunteer fire department who does not have any way to get in there to fight the fire. So we'll have to wait for someone to come to unlock the gate from wherever it is that these people will be to let us in. And they are concerned that if the panels are cracked in any way or have been damaged by hail, for instance, and there is a fire, the toxic chemicals inside the panels will also be able to catch on fire, and that will create a toxic chemical fire, which is fought in a totally different way than a normal fire department would fight a brush fire. This facility is right across the road from our high school and our grade school, 2 different locations. How would we evacuate them if there was a chemical fire? We had 3 fire department. We have a volunteer fire department, and we have had 3 at our last community meeting. And they said, we have no way to fight that fire, and we have no protection, and we have no training. If there was a solar fire in Callaway County, we would not respond. That's flat out. So we have a lot of people, 136 families around this particular one. We have another solar facility, mine, which has 23 more families. So we're looking at 160 families that are concerned about fire, safety, health. If the toxic chemicals come, how are we going to know that we need to evacuate? How are we going to be notified? There's all kinds of things that need to be done to regulate that. Our commissioners are concerned about this, and they don't know what to do about that, and they don't really have any power to do anything. So the toxic chemicals, also if the panels are broken, say there was a hailstorm, and then rain came, it can wash the toxic chemicals out of that into the soil, and then the soil then can be leached over onto adjoining properties. It can also go down into our water table. That would affect our people's wells. A lot of them have wells. It would affect the water system totally if it would go down. So there's those kinds of concerns. That's just a couple of them. You know, we have probably 5 or 6. There's a noise problem. There's a wildlife problem. There's, you know, it goes on and on. I can give you about 23 different concerns that we have. So we need our commissioners to have some power to regulate these things and have negotiations. I have spent the last 2 months calling as many commissioners in the state as I can and talked to them personally. We have 114 counties in our state. 72 of them do not have planning and zoning, so the commissioners are the last barrier. They're the ones that have to make the decisions. They're the ones that have to live with it. They're the ones that have to deal with the clientele. They are extremely concerned. I've talked with all but 15 of them, and I would say 3/4 of them are extremely concerned. They need regulation. They need power. They're afraid. They know that this is coming. I asked them how much leased solar they had and how much operational power solar they had. And to date, without those 16 that I don't have, they have 10,000 acres of operational solar and 80,000 acres of leased solar coming in. So this is not something that we can put off. It is descending on us at 8 times the rate that we're dealing with right now. We need to have the commissioners to have the power to be regulated. We need to have them be able to make good decommissioning agreements. I just saw a study by a man by the name of Ronnie Heisinger. He is a soil and conservation professor out of South Carolina. In 2017, he did an extensive study on what it would cost to actually reclaim the land that the solar projects they're guaranteeing us. They're saying, we will put this back exactly like you had it, and we'll do a decommissioning agreement to get the money to do that. He said in 2017, and he's got all of his figures in there, in order to get that land cleared, to get the panels put into a toxic chemical landfill, which is very, very expensive, to get the soil back to where it needs to be, because they're going to move the soil, they're going to remove it, they're going to put it into berms, it's going to wash away, they're going to have to carry soil in, all of these kinds of things. His figure was $278,000 per acre to reclaim it. Now, just in rough figures, if you take that 7,000 acre solar project that's getting ready to start in Callaway County, and multiply it by $278,000, or say 300, you're looking at a decommissioning agreement of over $2 billion. I have never, in all of the 3 years that I've been researching this, seen a decommissioning agreement for more than a couple of million, no matter how big it is. So they're not going to have enough money to reclaim this land and put it back the way that it was. So that's going to fall on the county commissioners to help farmers, because farmers don't have that kind of money, even with the good rent that they're going to get. So we're facing kind of a disaster of an industrial waste situation if we don't get some regulation in here. The taxation, it seems that the solar are whining a little bit about the rate of taxation. They get $56,000 per acre in tax subsidies. The wind companies that have to pay the 37.5% seem to have no problem paying it. They're just doing it. They're coming. There's 40,000 acres of wind, according to the commissioners I've talked to, 40,000 acres of wind leased to come into Missouri. And they know they're going to have to pay that 37.5%, and they're not whining it. Now, I understand, the way I understand my assessor, and I may be wrong about this. I tried to get my assessor to come today. And the assessors wanted a percentage. I'm sure that Senator Serpoy remembers that when we did the task force, and I was at the task force meeting when we did that 3 years ago, and I was at every meeting. I heard every word that was said in there. The assessors during that task force said we need a percentage. We don't want it per megawatt, because this way we can accurately assess it. If inflation comes, if deflation comes, we can move it and accurately assess it. And I heard both assessors on the task force and assessors who came in to testify say that they wanted this and not a per megawatt. The way I understand it, it is 37.5% of the 33% that they would normally be taxed. So if I'm right, then that's a whole lot less. We need an assessor to tell us what this would be. When I called my assessor, I asked him, I said, can you estimate what that would be in our county? And he said, without knowing the amount of solar panels on there and the cost of the solar panels and the arrays that are put on there, I can't give you an accurate figure. So, you know, we don't know. So, I mean, you know, he did a guesstimation and said, well, you know, if the solar panels are worth this and there's 14 per acre, yada, yada, it would be about $1 million for us, for that 7,000 acres. So, you know, it seems to me it's accurate. If what I am thinking of the assessment on the 37.5% is what is actually going to be done. So I would implore you, please, to give serious thought to this bill, to understand that it's not something that we can put off another year because of the 80,000 acres that's coming in. We need to get some regulation. We need to get something that will reimburse our county to be able to get fire equipment and the things that they need to protect us. They need to have the power to regulate the size and the scope of the projects so that they don't eat up entire sections of their county. And they need to be able to limit that if they need to protect the agricultural economy. So I would I would urge you, please, to consider this, and I think Senator Fitzwater's bill is absolutely the best one that I've seen in the 3 years that I've been dealing with this. So.
Well, thank you. He doesn't hear that very often, so that's good to hear. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Next person in opposition, please come forward.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Zach Monroe on behalf of Ameren, Missouri. Just here to do a brief testimony in opposition on the permitting parameters of this bill and the setbacks. It's just something that we think is overly aggressive for our plans that we have for the future. We work really well with the counties, and it would be an extra overburdensome step before we go to the commission to present for these projects. That's all I have.
Just the numbers in the bill itself are the problem, not necessarily the idea?
Well, no, the proposition of having to go to a commission and get an approval from a commission of an unknown circumstances, how this bill reads now, before we can go and then go to the PSC to get a CCN for that project we view as an excessively overburdensome step, especially when most of the land that we're doing now is stuff that we have for the future, stuff that we own in most cases. We do have some leased projects, but most of it's stuff that we own already.
Okay, thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next in favor, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Gary Youngerman. I'm the presiding commissioner of Callaway County, and I'm also representing Missouri Association of Counties today as well. I think I'm going to ditto a lot of stuff that was said here. Today we're talking about Senate Bill 213, and so you're either in favor or you're against or whatever. But so I'm testifying in favor, but I'm going to say this. I ain't going to add on to what many of them have said already that are for it. What I'm going to say is, as a commissioner, I'm going to speak as a commissioner for a little bit. We get put in a room with these different solar companies, if we're lucky to get to sit down, and we have to try to negotiate something. Well, there's not a lot of negotiation power when it comes to the county commission. We control the roads in our county, but private property is private property, and we don't have any rights there. So I guess what I'm saying is, we're working right now to try to come up with something with a current solar company that is done already, actually started in a way. But the problem here's the underlying problem. You sign agreements that, for whatever they're worth, on road usage, maybe even a PILT program or pilot program. But in my case, I'm working with a company, X, known as Y LLC, that now, before we've ever even come to an agreement, has sold to another company that we know of but don't know anything about, really. So there's just a lot that county commissions are trying to deal with that is kind of an uncertainty, I guess we'll say. And then you talk about decommissioning agreements, which we also try to do. And those numbers in the agreement are probably not high enough, but we've got them as high as we can get them. And you have to either do something or don't do something. So I want you all to know there's a lot of underlying issues here as a county commissioner. When you sit down at the table, you don't have really any power to speak of, and everyone knows that. Even with planning and zoning, you've got some ways to tie up property in other ways, or say that this is the only thing maybe can be used for solar. But many of us do not have planning and zoning. Not that we haven't put that on the ballot, but it hasn't passed because we live in very rural communities, farmers that have been there for years, and they do the things that they do and do a good job of it. I will tell you that because of the lack of us not having some authority in what we're able to do, it is destroying our communities. People that have these small country churches with 100, 150 people divided, because some have leased, some have not. People that have been friends for 50 years no longer are friends because there's just no control of what's happening. So I guess I want to say this in closing. Whether it's this bill, I think all of us understand that something has to be done. And so what is it that we're going to do? If that's sitting down at a table for 3 days to try to figure this out, I'm willing to do that. we have to come up with some sort of an answer so that there's some closure on what's happening with this huge influx of renewable energy, because there's nothing in Missouri that stops things from just thousands and thousands of more acres to become solar farms.
So presently, as a commissioner, they don't need your permission to do anything.
To some degree, that is correct.
I mean, they do come to you for the payment in lieu of taxes or something, right? To get
The
an
only
assessment?
thing that they really, and honestly, because as county commissions, we receive federal dollars, okay? And statute says that we have a public road that we have to maintain. That road in statute is 30 feet, including the ditches, okay? So we have 30 feet. After that, we have no say. Now, if there's been somebody bring a road into the county that they wanted us to accept, like a development or something, a lot of times we end up making that 50 feet, so we have more right-of-way, I guess you would say. But by statute, most of the county roads out here that you drive on, the county controls 15 foot from the center line both ways. That's it. That's all we really have say over. After, and our roads, because we take federal transportation dollars, the weight limits that are out there for MoDOT's highways are basically our weight limits too on our gravel roads. And so what solar companies do, and most of them I think are pretty good at that, they want to come and try to work out some sort of a road agreement so that they will assist you in maintaining your current road, which is great because they don't have to do that. They're just trying to be good neighbors, and as a commissioner, I appreciate that.
But when they come, because right now, after the Supreme Court ruling, the assessors have the ability to assess them any way they want to, right?
It just depends on how it's done in a way. Most of the solar projects are done under a Chapter 100.
Right, and in that case, don't they come to you to get that? We have to sign off on that, yes. So
and initially, I was not in favor of that, but Chapter 100s are a unique deal. They can be used in a million different ways.
Right, but that's a potential choke point for you to have some control over these projects, I
Correct,
guess is what I'm getting at.
With Chapter 100s, that does leave it locally assessed.
Right. So, and so that's, I'm just saying, I'm not saying this bill is not well-intentioned and has a lot of potential, but you do have some control via that taxation process.
We do, but you have to, without some guidance from the state level, in full respect of everybody I've ever worked with, when it comes to utilities, a lot of times, the assessor can tax them. Let's just say the assessor did a perfect job. Let's just say that. There's always arguments out there of whether or not that's been assessed properly. And so you end up, as a county, in some litigation,
right,
and money in escrow for a number of years. So
well, historically, generation's been essentially assessed, and the wind changed that, and I think the solar's going to change it too, but that's kind of also another little area that's different from the past. So anyway, well, thank you, sir. Senator May, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what power do you need? What power, as sitting in a commission, Steve, what power do you think you need? Because if we're dealing with private landowners and people who are no longer farming their land and trying to figure out a way to make that land profitable,
I think, to be real honest, I don't think there's a county commissioner in this state that wants to have to deal with it at all. There just needs to be some state rules, and we'll follow those state rules. But at the end of the day, if the best that's out there is to give county commissions some authority to work with renewables, that are coming into your county, we'll take that, I guess. But does a county commissioner, we got a lot of other things that we do, providing services to the county, so our hands are full most of the time. But if that's what it is, we'll take on that responsibility, but we need some guidelines. And do we want to tell people what they can and can't do? No. I don't think there's a county commissioner. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to, if we have to do it, then we want to be able to somewhat be able to control it to some degree too, because Callaway County and many counties in the center part of the state, and even in the southern and whatever, it's extremely agricultural, and that's what we do. And now you're taking all of that out of service, which is, it's tremendous, and it takes away from what farmers have always done across this country for generations, is providing those grains and stuff for everything that we do. whether it's food or feed or whatever it might be. So we need the ability to, and I think some of that was brought up earlier, force them to into a public hearing and different things. Not that they don't, some of them don't do that, they do. I'm not trying to throw all of them under a bus here. I just think it's so loose though that you get what you get, okay? So.
Is there a solution, a county solution for farms that are no longer being formed? You know, like say for instance, how do we keep this as a county, you know, active and basically leasing that farmland to the county to be formed, but you know.
Right. Everything changes all the time. But the sad thing, when you look at, and you can look these up, and I don't know the exact numbers, but when you look at across this country, the amount of acreage on a yearly basis, farm acreage that's going to something different, it's kind of shocking to see those acre numbers. Because Callaway is over 500,000 acres, but in size. But we're not all ag. We got some really good ag along the river. We got some good ag up in the prairies, but then we also got some rolling wooded area too. But that's not what solar is looking for, those areas. They're looking for the flatter areas, and I understand that. So you're taking away a lot of things. So like I said, I don't think there's any commissioners that really want to deal with this. We would like to see it just dealt with at a state level as far as tax and whatnot, and have maybe some things with permitting and allowing them to have hearings and whatnot, public hearings, but we don't necessarily are asking for all of the control, of what people do on their private property.
Yeah. Well, I know, I'm just asking the question because, as the great-granddaughter of my great-grandfather, his land right now, we're grandchildren trying to figure out what to do with the 87 acres that haven't been sold right now.
I understand
and
that.
That's in another state, of course, but,
And I'm not going to, I'm not going to lie to you, probably as some of these older farm ground, it turns, all of a sudden, next generation gets it and they're not per se farmers. So now what are they going to do with that? Are they going to continue, are they going to cash rent it? Are they going to lease it to somebody to farm? Or what are they going to do? And in this day and age, I understand that if you're not farming it, you're trying to figure out how to make the best investment you can make. And that turns out to be whatever it is, renewables or whatever it might be.
I'm thinking about a resort, but nobody likes my idea.
I like the resort thought.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, opposition, please come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Ryan DeBoof. I am testifying for MOSIA, that is the Missouri Solar Energy Industry Association. Our CEO is not able to be here today. Apologize for that. If I might mention first the land use issues that have been discussed. The solution on things like setbacks and percentage of property is actually pretty simple. It's a county zoning ordinance. And with regard to what power does the county need, they have the power to do that currently. So we think that would be the more appropriate way to deal with these kind of situations. Then if we move into the tax issue, we've distributed a handout. There's a chart in that handout that goes through kind of the country of what the taxing protocols have been various places. We're in support of the notion of developing a tax protocol that is pro-business and that is also a sustainable protocol that pays for the appropriate services in the county. So we're engaged in conversations on that with the senator and with the House handler and the House counterpart. We hope to continue those conversations.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next in favor, please come forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, State Public Advocate. I submitted my form this morning online, and I'm in favor of Senate Bill 213. Senate Bill 213 is an issue that needs to be dealt with statewide. This is the best way to deal with it in terms of regulations, setbacks, zoning for unincorporated counties, and that it needs to be at least I believe 1,000 foot away from any church, city, village, etc. I believe in the public hearing process. I don't think that there should be any secrets or any hiding of the information that a solar farm is coming to a community. As we all know, Callaway County along I-70 is the biggest controversy, and the people just weren't informed until it started to be constructed, and it was too late to oppose or to testify at public meetings about the issue. When it comes to taxation, as you all know, I'm a fair person about taxes across the board. I don't think there should be any tax credits or lack of paying taxes. Everybody, if they're making a profit, they should pay their share to run our state government, our county government, and our local governments. I think that this is a commercial entity. They're making business profits hand over fist, and they should be responsible for their tax liability to the Department of Revenue and also to the county tax collector of revenue. For those reasons, I believe in the public hearing. I believe that there needs to be change and regulations for zoning, planning, and implementation of solar farms, and therefore I support the bill.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry. Next in opposition. How many people left to testify? Okay. We're losing our members, so come on up. Okay, Carla.
Good morning. So glad to have such a crowd here to talk to. My name is Gretchen Waddell Barwick. I'm with the Missouri Sierra Club. I'll be brief in my comments and just say Sierra Club opposes this bill. This is an attack on the solar industry. Frankly, there are a lot of things that are impacting agriculture. There are terrible business practices from formerly Monsanto, now Bayer, that are meaning that we can't use the seeds that we want to. We're having trouble with being able to repair our own machinery. We are struggling to get people to even want to be in the agricultural business. We're struggling to see profits from the sale of foods. Also, climate change is impacting our ability to do what we need to do and grow the food that we need to do to feed people. The solar industry, while not perfect, nothing is a fantastic way to stop the spread of climate change. Also, I'm hearing a lot of misinformation in this room today, and it seems to me that just basic Googling might be helpful. So I'm hearing some concerns about fires and tornadoes. Solar panels are literally designed to withstand those things. And having solar panels on your farm does not mean that you cannot farm. There's an entire process called agrivoltaics, which is the process of farming with solar panels. And the proponents of that actually have a lot of benefits. They say that you can use it on animal farming, you can use it with vegetation. And this is an incredibly frustrating thing for me because just yesterday, Senate Bill 4 passed in the Senate, and that bill provides a lot of money towards monopoly utilities to invest in gas and nuclear potentially and fossil fuels. And to say that we need our counties to be able to excessively tax only solar companies and nobody else that comes into our counties, this is not a way to legislate having fantastic input from our communities into development. Counties can already do that. Communities can already create their own zoning processes, their own land use processes and policies. And right now in Missouri, we're struggling to get a lot of consumer-sized solar, or rather large-sized solar in our state, because we already have counties that have exorbitant fees and permits. And that means that we're losing out on tax income and potential federal money in our state. So, in addition to taking away options for families, to only targeting the solar industry and nothing else that could come into a community and potentially impact agriculture or other things in our community, in addition to having some of the largest taxes in the United States and an unreasonable setback, this bill picks winners and losers in our energy systems. We are already subsidizing fossil fuels in our state. We need to create more opportunities for people to make money and be able to invest in our land, not less.
Thank you. Questions? I see that. Thank you very much. Just so people know, the committee, this is a busy place, and this is not meant to be disrespectful that people leave, but they have other commitments they have to leave to. So I just want folks to know that. When they see people walk out, it's not because they're fed up. They're just got other things to be. Next person in favor, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm going to start off by saying what a year. I got a statement written, and I'd be happy to answer questions afterwards. Hello, my name is Greg Westhuesing. I'm a resident and local farmer of Henry County, which is located 2.5 hours southwest of Jefferson City. I stand before you today mostly in support of this bill. The only exception being is that our county is a township form of government, consisting of 19 townships located within our county. I do not want this bill to supersede our local control and letting county commissioners decide on this issue when most of our townships have passed planning and zoning and have or are in the process of implementing such. The reason behind this is emphatic, because without any public knowledge or input, a solar company came into our area and started signing leases with farmers, though our township had previously publicly recorded a planning and zoning ordinance back in 1995. So after approximately 6 years of signing leases, the LLC finds out that they have to go through the township board to proceed. This is what has transpired since. The company applied for a permit, which was ultimately denied. During this time, the ordinance was updated, and some farmers who have signed up their land decided to put on the ballot to abolish our zoning. Let's just say that did not end very well. We kept our ordinance in place by a vote of 78 to 43, with roughly 85% of a turnout, and approximately 35 of the 43 votes were farmers or their families that had signed leases. I'm truly in favor of making the solar companies make this public knowledge, as it was done in secret for the past 6 years in our county, and also would prefer the setbacks to be set at a 1/4 mile as opposed to 1,000 feet, as most of these people located in proximity do not ask to be resulting in involved in something that would dramatically impact their biggest investment, resulting in loss of property values or way of life. Without regulating this industry, it is causing huge divisions among good, hardworking people in this great state. Every day solar or wind is unregulated in this state is another day conflicts will arise between friends, family, and neighbors. As a lot of you are aware, there are proposed facilities starting construction this year, so you have a decision to make. Either step up and support agriculture, their business, and the true American farmer, while providing protections for local residents and aligning with what the vast majority of your constituents want, or let rural landscape and the way of life be ruined for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Did you fill out a witness form, sir?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you very much. Next in opposition, please come forward. Greg, thanks for driving up here today. Appreciate that very much.
Good morning, committee. My name is Tyler Travers, here today on behalf of Renew Missouri. We're a 501c3 to promote renewable energy throughout the state. One of our primary concerns with this legislation, and specifically the setbacks, is that we believe there might be a constitutional problem with the Right to Farm Amendment, which we added to the Constitution in 2014, which allows farmers the right to create energy on their land. Furthermore, we recognize that there's a need for more uniform taxation on these projects. We just think there might be better ways to go about it, and there's been legislation filed to do so, perhaps by per megawatt, which would be preferable for us. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
My name is John Burns. I live on a Century Farm,
and have for the last 53 years. I am in favor of this bill, especially on the 1,000-foot setbacks. 2,500 is recommended by non-solar company research. 1,000 feet provides a minimum protection from fire, water, runoff, which could contain toxic chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. My son and his family live on our farm. I have 3 grandchildren. They will be 220 feet from their house. The property north of our farm drains onto that property. There's no way to stop it. So if they come right up to the property line, there'll be no way to keep whatever runs off of that farm to our farm. They have a pond, they have children. They have great concerns, and I have great concerns. There is very little regulation on these. There's been very little study. Everything, like has been said before, is done in secrecy. I'm 78 years old. If you have something not to hide, don't hide it. But if you do, you should be explored. This is what we need to do. We need to check. We need some rules and regulations to protect the people of this state, of every county. Senators are elected by the people. Solar lobbyists are not your constituents, per se. They're representing companies that have absolutely no regard for the people of this state. They don't care. Most of them are owned by entities that are not even in this country. So I would ask you, please, work for us. Help us. You are our last line of defense. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. See no questions. Next person in opposition, please come forward. Nobody? Anybody else in favor? Anybody for information purposes? Thank you for your testimony today. If I move that we adjourn the meeting, do I have a second? We're adjourned.